Media, and we're going to be talking about back to basics and marketing on LinkedIn. So I can see a nice big crowd coming in, and what a pleasure to have you all on. Appreciate you all coming in. We're going to get through quite a bit today, and just to let you know a few points around navigating. I'm having access here myself. Morris, I'm not managing to turn the slide. You can. Okay, perfect. Perfect. That's excellent. You might have to turn while but everybody receiving. Hopefully, all good and well. My name is John Bowles from Turn Left Media. Just a little bit about us. We represent LinkedIn marketing solutions in sub-Saharan Africa. Everything below, including Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, and of course, South Africa are our largest territories that we're serving. We are the representatives to help you with your campaign management and anything you need to know about LinkedIn. But one of the ways we do that is by getting you a little bit more educated on the platform, and that's our plan today. Just a little bit more info. If you guys want to just load up into the chat box here, any questions?
I'm saying because I want to listen to speakers, not through the.
I think we've got somebody that's coming through.
No, it is plugged in.
But do you sound?
There we go, muted. But you can just load up any questions you want in that chat box, and we'll deal with them at the end of the presentation. So how this is going to work is I'm going to just do a brief intro into the Prezzo, then Marius, our co-founder and director, is going to kind of handle the meat of the presentation. He's going to be followed by Samantha Olivier, who is our head of operations here at Turn Left Media, that's going to be running through a number of the products that we have on LinkedIn. And finally, we've got Sam Parker, based in London, from LinkedIn itself, that's going to be talking about just some nice trends that are, well, some top B2B marketing trends that you can take away with you. We'll be gone in 45 minutes. You can do a lot of Q&A, but we'll be done then. So, I think I've kind of covered the basics there. Obviously, if you start to kind of unmute yourself, you're going to be heard, and you can do that if you want to raise a question, but otherwise just make sure you're muted and mute it off. We are going to be recording this whole presentation, so, and obviously have it available for you to download at a later stage. I think somebody's coming through at the moment, so can you just be aware that you're on, and if you can mute yourself, be appreciated. All right, Morris, if you can move on to the next slide. So, just to set the scene, I think, there's a lot of options out there, particularly when you get into the digital landscape and the social media landscape. And, one of the points that we like to start our presentation with is about just separating where LinkedIn fits into this environment, because there are many networks out there, and we are using many of those networks, of course, for our own personal and professional use. But when we go to a personal network, of course, we're spending time, we're getting updated, we're staying in tune, in touch with our friends, and being entertained. So we spend a lot of time on personal networks. But when we go to professional networks, we're investing time, and we're kind of in a very different mindset when we go there, because we're trying to stay up to date with brands, we're looking at what's going on within our professional networks, and we're trying to add value and contribute to those conversations. So it's just a different type of environment that we're operating in. And today, when you walk away, hopefully when you've got a good feel about what LinkedIn's all about, the role it plays, and the ad units and products that are available, as well as just some best practice guides, you'll be able to walk away with just a much better knowledge on the platform. But to just, again, put it into perspective, I need to tell a little bit of a story to start it up, because not only when we go to different networks are we in a different mindset, but the content and context that we go into those networks is pretty important. And no better way of illustrating that is with the story about Joshua Bell. So if content is king, context is King Kong. And I'll just put it into perspective like this. So Joshua Bell, he is an award-winning Grammy artist that's been playing the violin for many, many years. In fact, since he was 17, and he's done fairly well at it. He's worth $15 million. He debuted at Carnegie Hall. I mean, his violin alone is worth almost $4 million. So this guy is literally in tune and can kind of get the job done. He's won numerous awards, including several Grammys. Back in 2008, the Washington Post, in fact, did an experiment, and I think they were trying to just experiment particularly in this area of content and context and the environment that we put our brands in. They put Joshua, he just played out the night before at one of the music halls. He was, I think he was asking for $200 a ticket, and he sold out on that. But they thought, let's put him into a metro station in Washington, and let's see what happens when we put him into a baseball cap, put out his $4 million violin, and get him playing the same set that he played the night before. Obviously, a metro station or a subway station is going to be a good place for traffic, lots of volume of traffic coming through, probably a fairly good audience. I mean, commuters are generally, have disposable income and contribute to the financial well-being of society. So Josh actually got the big crowds coming through. In fact, he got, how many guys do you think passed him in that 45 minutes? Well, I'll tell you, it was 1,097 people passed him in the 45-minute gig that he'd done the night before. He played his 6 songs on the strings. How many people do you think stopped for Joshua just to take in the glory, the magician, the man himself? Well, it was, you guessed it, 7. 7 people stopped, of which one of them recognized him probably from the concert the night before and had enjoyed him the night before. So only 7 out of the 1,097 stopped. But how much, I mean, the big question is, how much money did Joshua make in that 45-minute period of time? Well, he made $32, and 20 of that came from the one person who recognized him, heavily discounting his ticket. So we've got a great brand, Joshua Bell. We've got him in an environment where there's a lot of traffic. But the context of the environment here wasn't really well received, and the audience didn't recognize the quality of the brand. I think if there's one thing we walk away with today when it comes to LinkedIn is when you're putting your brand into this environment, just make sure the brand that you're representing and working with fits into the environment correctly. So that sets the scene. There's a lot to go through. Hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation. But back over to Marius.
Hey everybody, thank you again so much for joining us today. So John's given us a little bit of an intro into the professional mindset and the context and why that's important. And I'm going to delve a little bit more into the LinkedIn platform so we can narrow it down slightly. And to do that, I want to talk a little bit about what LinkedIn means as a business, both for you as individuals, but also for you as businesses. So LinkedIn is all about you, your professional community, and helping you connect to opportunity. But we know we don't get anywhere alone. It takes a community of people to help us be successful. So we went out and we talked to a few real members about how they use their professional communities on LinkedIn to reach whatever their definition of success is in their careers. Because after all, like success is when who you are lines up with what you do. And it's created this ecosystem of being in it together. And this image does a great job of introducing you to who we are as a company and our purpose in the world. And LinkedIn is really a community of people that help you get to where you want to go. You can see from this image and from some of the videos that LinkedIn have shared that you're never alone, we're always in it together. So I want you all to encourage to think about what you're in it for. We all have a pretty unique story to tell. And getting clear on what you're in it for will help you tell yours on LinkedIn. So when we think about LinkedIn and we start talking about the vision, we always try to define that as our true north. So it's the dream as the business, what drives us every day at LinkedIn at Turn Left, and it's to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And it sounds like a pretty lofty goal, but when you break it down, it is also, ironically enough, the success for how to be good on LinkedIn. So as this overarching objective, it's something realizable, measurable, and ideally a little bit inspirational. And LinkedIn's is to connect the world's professionals and make them more productive and successful. And if you take one thing away from today, whether it's organically or through paid media, if you think about the one thing that you can do to help people on the platform be more productive and successful, that's going to help you resonate with your brand as well. So if you are a IT company, it's not about selling your product and service. It's about how you're going to help your client get better insights into their data using your product. If you are a automotive brand, it's about helping people have a better successful career getting from point A to point B. And the good thing is that we do this on LinkedIn, where you have a safe space for your brand. So there's no Trumps or Kardashians on LinkedIn. It really is, for the last 2 years in a row, the most trusted social media platform in the world. There's studies done by Business Insider, by Edelman, and all of it shows us that LinkedIn, comparably, is one of the best spaces for thought leadership and for senior executives to be on. But not just that, it's also this triangulation of these three essential audiences that every single business needs to engage in. From an employee side, it's speaking to the people who will help you advocate and grow your reputation. From a customer side, it's the people who are going to be voting with their wallets. And then from a stakeholder side, you're also going to be reacting to people who manage your reputation by way of stock prices and policy changes. And LinkedIn's one of the few places where all of these audiences all triangulate. So globally, LinkedIn's got a pretty big audience, 630 million members across the world, more than 200 countries, 30 million businesses, and more than 2 new members who join every second. So this starts with our professional community, both on a local and on a regional level, and then it expands into our larger continent as well. So in Africa, we now have 33 million registered members. We've got 7.5 million in South Africa, over 2 million in Kenya, more than 4.5 million in Nigeria. And people are always asking us where the disconnect happens between the population size and the registered members. So, 58 million members on LinkedIn. There's more than 20 million members on Facebook in South Africa. But we like to think about it from a professional and an economically viable basis. So 58 million people in South Africa, for example, 14 million who are registered to pay personal income tax, and only 7.4, 7.5 who actually do. Same situation in Kenya. Sorry, do you somebody's just unmuted themselves? Okay, hopefully that helps. So same situation in Kenya, same situation in Nigeria. When we think about the people who are on LinkedIn, we think about people who are economically active, who are educated, and who potentially have disposable income. Those are the type of individuals that we want to speak to. And it's very important for us to understand how LinkedIn benefits us as individuals before we think about it as beneficial to our business. Because if you can see how it benefits you, you can extrapolate that to think about your business as well. So on LinkedIn, I go onto the platform because I want to connect with my industry. I want to connect with my colleagues, my peers, as well as my clients. I want to go and be able to follow my clients. I want to see what's happening in their business. I want to connect to their CEO and their CMO. I want to understand the conversations and the narratives that's driving their business. What have they announced in the news today? Has somebody got a promotion? Are they participating in a particular CSI event? I want to be able to go and I want to look at what's happening in their competitors as well, so that when I go and I have an in-person meeting with the client, I'm able to have an intelligent conversation. I also want to give and receive expert advice through long-form posts. So it's no longer necessary just to have your own personal blog or your company website. You're able to produce thought leadership on the platform itself, and you can then utilize the social shareability elements of LinkedIn to get that content in front of individuals that matter. If I follow, for example, General Motors, or I follow VW or Microsoft, when that brand is mentioned in the news, when they're mentioned in an article, that information is then shared on the network with me. I can also follow influencers, people like Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Barack Obama, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. All of these individuals who've got amazing stories to tell, global brands, people buy millions of their books, and now we've got the opportunity to follow them and receive that information directly to us. We can obviously also still look for jobs and apply, and those are all opportunities that provide us with opportunities to grow our professional careers. And then we can also grow our own skill set through things like LinkedIn Learning. We know that in today's time, our skill set has a very limited shelf life. As new technologies and new experiences dominate our conversation, the fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence, all of us have to continuously update our skill set in order to remain relevant. And because of this, we've seen an amazing upswing in LinkedIn. So 57% growth in mobile sessions year on year, more than 50% growth in how people engage in the network, and 2 times the growth in social engagement. So LinkedIn is changing from just being an online repository for my professional portfolio or my professional network, and it's become the de facto publishing platform for the world's business. So now LinkedIn Marketing Solutions helps you in sort of 3 areas. It helps you to plan, market, and optimize your business in order to use LinkedIn's data to reach these right people and have meaningful conversations with them. And we see this happening on a global basis. So 92% of B2B marketers use LinkedIn to distribute content and achieve their objectives. But LinkedIn isn't just for B2B. There's also the opportunity to engage with professionals, high net worth individuals, and individuals across the spectrum. But when we create content, we have to be mindful of a few things that help individuals in engaging in our content. So the first thing is it has to be educated. Sorry, I just need to. So the first thing, again, it needs to be educational or informative. We need to be able to take the insights that we receive on the platform, and we have to be able to extrapolate that into actual usage on the platform itself. Then it has to be relevant to me. So are we having conversations that are relevant to my platform, to my vertical? We all want to stay on top of the latest trends, and unfortunately, with the way that the world has changed and the volume of information that's available, that's becoming incredibly complex. So one of the benefits that LinkedIn offers is this funnel of information that allows you to receive the information that matters to you directly into your inbox. I want to be inspired, so we see amazing examples of content being shared, creative examples, best use cases. People are always looking for inspiration, and then things that help them be better at what they do. And all of these solutions help us grow our skill set. So no matter how great your company's brand, there are people that may be unaware of your company or your specific products at your company. So the opportunity is to move our clients on LinkedIn from being unaware to being an ambassador. And at each point in our clients' relationships with your companies, your teams are likely to want to engage in meaningful ways. And LinkedIn provides many of those connection points. But it's not just for today, it's also for the future. Because once your brand connects with an individual today, they travel with them throughout their entire professional career. So you've got the ability to build long-term relationships. And the depth of information that we have around our members is fundamentally at the core of how LinkedIn can help you to do that. So first thing that we do is we help you with identity data. So who the person is, the job they have, the school they attended, the network they've built on the site. Then the engagement is what a person does, the groups they join, the posts they share, the jobs they apply for. And lastly, our intent-based data is what is derived from our identity engagement. It's what matters to that particular person, who and what they like and care about. And I'll use an example of a lady called Karabo to help explain this. So when members join LinkedIn, they create an identity and they add to that identity over time. In Karabo's case, this might mean that she's a director of strategy at a multinational company and that she's had 3 promotions in the last 3 years. It means that she works in the Greater Johannesburg area, has 24 skills and 16 recommendations. And we know this because she's created a profile, she's added her experience and education, she's added skills and interests, and then she's built her network. Then, when they start interacting on LinkedIn, Karabo creates her engagement story. So this means that she joins strategic groups, a group about digital marketing, a group for female entrepreneurs. She posts content often about women in business. So as Karabo communicates, learns, and shares, she creates the story for us. And then lastly, this allows us to understand her professional intent. So who somebody is and how they behave on LinkedIn, to understand what they care about, what they find meaningful, and what they're passionate about. So in Karabo's case, all her identity and engagement data tells us that she wants to develop her skills as a member and that she's aspiring to senior leadership. And there are 613 million members like Karabo. And two more join every single second. So 630 million stories, just like Karabo's, in that they consist of identity data, an engagement story, and professional intent. And each of them is different and unique to their own. There's only one Karabo. So every action on LinkedIn is a signal that allows us to understand a person's intent. And ironically enough, LinkedIn data, according to the South African government, is a crystal ball into the future of work.
I'll try to give a proper answer by now.
Now I'm going to quickly hand over to Sam, who's going to take us through the next steps.
Hello everybody, it's wonderful to be with you today. I'm just going to quickly switch so that I can control the slides. And if you don't mind, and in the meantime, please feel free to post any questions you may have in the chat box. We'd love to answer any questions you may have. Fantastic, let me see. All right, just seeing if I can move. Marius, it doesn't look like it's working, so if you could just scroll. Fantastic. All right, guys, so I've got quite a bit to get through. I'm going to take us through all the different products on LinkedIn. I'm going to try and give us a thorough explanation of each product and then some practical tips. If you have any questions, I'll stop halfway to see if we have any. Otherwise, I'm more than happy, any one of us is more than happy to answer any additional questions you have. But to kick things off, we've got our LinkedIn pages. So company pages are how we establish a brand's presence on LinkedIn. And there are 2 ways that you can communicate with users through pages. It's either going to be through organic updates or paid for or promoted updates. It's very important to note that if an advertiser or brand doesn't have a company page on the platform, they can't promote updates or advertise. They would need to first off create a company page. And we really recommend that you do this to establish a brand's presence and gain followers to your page. There's some exciting new features. Recently, they launched that you can now manage your page on your mobile phone, which is fantastic. So wherever you're at, you can log on and manage your page from there. You also get alerts when your company or employees are mentioned, as well as enhanced insights and content suggestions. So if we look at the next slide, great. Companies with active pages are definitely more successful. We see some incredible stats mentioned here, like a 5 times lift in page views, 11 times lift in clicks per follower. We see the average impressions per follower are 7 times higher, as well as content marketing scores being twice as high. On to the next one, we see that your page is a fantastic place where you can showcase content that sets your brand apart. So things like PowerPoint presentations, PDFs. Another really exciting way that you could use this is through long-form blog posts that you would post on your personal page and then share to your company page. We always say that people want to hear from people, and so this is an exciting way that you can do that, but then post it onto your company page that then all your followers will receive. And on that point, one of the exciting stats that I always talk about is 100% of your followers will receive your updates from your pages, your organic updates, whereas I think on other sites it's about 2 or 3% of your followers will receive your company updates. On LinkedIn, 100% of your followers receive those updates. So it's well within your interest to grow your follower base so that you can speak to that audience organically. And all of this ensures that your audience is kept engaged and up to date with relevant content from your brand. Great. So as an admin of the page, you can actually go onto your page, and if you click on content suggestions, you can refine your insights by things like job function, industry, seniority, as you can see in this example. And this is great to see content and topics that your followers are already engaging with. And this will obviously help you refine your campaigns and your strategy. And so you're now able to track and share, best mentions of your brands. And also, as I mentioned, you'll receive notifications that your brands are mentioned in, as well as being able to filter down into these insights. Great. And moving on to sponsored content. Many of you will be familiar with sponsored content. Great. That's just an example of how we see that data displaying. So sponsored content is arguably our most popular ad unit within the sub-Saharan Africa space as well as globally. So sponsored content, as we've mentioned, you can post organically from your page, and all that sponsored content does is it promotes that post to a particular audience that is not already following your page. So there are 3 types of sponsored content that we see. We have our carousel, our single image, and our video. And I'm going to take you through each one of these. Carousel, as the name suggests, you can have a carousel of images that a user can then scroll through. You can have up to a maximum of 10 images with a call to action per image. And this shows in the feed of a user's profile. In fact, all of your sponsored content options will show in that feed. So it's in your direct line of sight of the user, and that's why we see such high engagements. Your single image post, we would upload a 1200 by 627 image with a headline, and then we can sponsor that to a particular audience. And then your video, in exactly the same way you would promote an image, we would promote a video. And just a top tip here, unfortunately, the specs for promoting or sponsoring a video are not the same as an organic post. So you can post a video organically, but when you want to promote it, it unfortunately has to adhere to the promoted video specs, which we are more than happy to share with you. But we often get asked that question of why are we struggling to promote it, and often it's because it's not to spec. Right, so those are our three sponsored content options, and we're going to go into the sponsored in-mail, but just to say sponsored content and sponsored in-mail are both compatible with mobile. So these are our only two products that are compatible with mobile, especially if that is a huge focus for your campaign. So the in-mail is a really awesome product. It goes to the member's inbox, and it's a one-to-one personalized message. The sponsored in-mail is delivered in real time, which means there's no wastage. So only when a user is active on the LinkedIn platform will it deliver to a user's inbox. So you don't have that scenario where someone only logs on once a month and that email is sitting dormant in their inbox, so that it will be delivered to those who are active on the platform. You can also only receive an in-mail every 45 days from any given brand. So if I receive a sponsored in-mail today, I can only receive my next one from another brand in 45 days' time. And then the nice thing about it being compatible with mobile is you can see from that image that there's a sticky call to action button. So when the user is scrolling and reading the in-mail on their mobile phone, at any point they can click that call to action button and engage with the message. And we see that the in-mail works really well when you have quite a lengthy message to a niche audience. So preferably you've got a lot of information to get across. You know, it's not just 2 lines that can look quite spammy. It's a lot of information, maybe about a course or a workshop or an offering sent to quite a niche group of people. And so, yeah, the in-mail is a fantastic way to communicate, as I say, a lot of information to a specific audience. We then move on to our text ads. Our text ads are what we would call quick, easy, affordable offerings or ad units. And these work really well when you possibly need to fill a course or a workshop quite quickly. And you're pressed for time. They are only 90 characters, so we can get them live quite quickly. And in terms of the CPM or CPC, they are very affordable. You can choose your layout. You can see here we have 4 options to choose from. So you either get the square layout, full, horizontal, long, and they show on the right-hand rail of the feed or at the top of your feed. And you'll recognize those if you go onto LinkedIn. You'll see them either at the top, that long text ad, or on the right-hand rail. And then we move on to our dynamic ads. So again, within the dynamic ad umbrella, we have 3 options: either your follower ad, your spotlight ad, or your content ad. And these display in the 300 by 250 ad slot size, also on the right-hand rail. So your follower ad, as the name suggests, you would run these to gain more followers to your company page. And the thing that I love about these dynamic ads, as you can see from this image, is it pulls in the member's profile picture and the brand logo, and then it actually calls out the name of the user. So often users don't even realize this is a paid for offering. They're seeing their picture, they're seeing their name, and they are thinking this must be for me. So it's very personalized and quite native in its look. So the follower ad specifically gains followers to your company page. The spotlight ad is customizable, and it can click through to a landing page of your choice. And then the third option is our content ad and what we would call our white paper download ad. So here the user has the opportunity to download a white paper or a PDF, and as they download it, they're also captured as a lead. And so twofold here, the user gets a piece of information as well as you, the advertiser, capturing them as a lead. So those are 3 dynamic ad options. And then we come to our lead gen. Now our lead gen, just for clarity's sake, this is not an ad unit on its own. this is something that we would attach to either our sponsored content, meaning our updates, our video, our carousels, or our in-mail. They are not yet they are not yet compatible with our dynamic ads. There's no additional cost for this lead gen form, so we can attach it to any of your ad units that you may run, other than dynamic ads or text ads. And you can have up to a maximum of 7 fields on your lead gen form. Now, we strongly recommend that you don't have more than 3 to 4 fields. We just see that more than that is too much for any user to fill in. And another top tip is, once it's live, you can't edit the lead forms. You'd have to build them from scratch. So just good to note that, we like to get them 100% accurate before we set it live, because if any changes need to be made, we have to pause the campaign and rebuild it. And then in terms of capturing your leads, there are 2 options. Either the leads can be sent directly to your CRM system. We can also email the leads directly to your inbox, and then we can also give you lead manager access to the campaign, and you can go in and download an Excel spreadsheet of all the leads, and you would always get them with your weekly reports if Turn Left is running your campaigns for you. So those are the options of how you can retrieve your leads. And then I just love this slide because it showcases all the ad units suited to every stage of the buying cycle or the buying funnel. And you can see on the left-hand side there, we've got these 4 tiers. You've got awareness, consideration, lead gen, and retention. And we always say the buying cycle on LinkedIn is long. We're not selling a pair of running shoes that you can quickly return to a store. It's often big purchasing decisions. And so we need to nurture our audience down the buying cycle. And you always want to start with a bit of awareness around the product or brand, and you would then utilize your sponsored content or video. You would then move on to possibly some carousel ads and dynamic ads. And then only in a second or third phase would we use our lead gen forms. We definitely don't want to just bombard people with lead gen forms before they've even got to know our brand and what we're about. So definitely something to keep in mind when you're planning your campaigns, that you first want to nurture them with information that's going to educate them about the brand before you ask them to give you something. You ask them to give you their details. And then obviously to consider, once they become a lead, what is the process? Often that's not thought about, and so we get all of these leads only for them to go cold. So I think that's crucial to running a lead gen campaign. What is the process that you're going to follow internally to make sure that people are being contacted shortly after they become a lead? I'm just going to stop at this point to see if there are any questions. There are a lot of questions. Okay, then what might make more sense, I've only got 3 more slides left. Let's carry on, and then we can possibly pause and go through some of those questions. So looking at the LinkedIn Insights tag. The Insights tag is completely free to set up, and we highly recommend that you leverage the Insights tag and the data available if you haven't done so already. So we can help you set this up, but we look at 3 sort of tiers that are linked to the Insights tag. They are website demographics, and this is a free tool that provides you with demographic info about your members visiting your websites. As I say, this is free to set up, so we would definitely recommend that as a starting point, you make sure that you implement the Insights tag. And then the second one is website retargeting, and the third is conversion tracking, which I'm going to go through in a little bit more detail. So looking at the next slide, conversion tracking. Again, no additional cost for this. You will need to add the LinkedIn Insights tag to your website. We will give you that piece of JavaScript code, and we recommend that you place this on the global footer of your website. It's always preferable. And just to give you a brief overview of how this will work, you would then choose where you want to track conversions. we would create a conversion action, and then we would add the conversion action to your campaign, and then you can measure your conversion performance with the built-in analytics. So conversion tracking is just great for understanding your ROI and optimizing for the results, that matter most. So we are happy to talk you through this process. We have a great getting started guide, but conversion tracking is fantastic, especially when you want to understand your audience a bit better. Secondly, we look at match audiences. And again, there are 3 tiers here. We've got your website retargeting, your email or contact targeting, and then account targeting. To quickly touch on the email or contact targeting, and then account or what we call company name targeting. So this is the opportunity for you to upload lists of data, either a list of email addresses or a list of company names, and then the system will match those. So we would get, as the name suggests, a matched audience. So for your email list, we recommend that you have a list of 10,000 emails. Obviously, that is quite a sizable list. If you have a smaller list, we are always happy to upload that and just see the kind of match we get back. Very important to note that depending on how recent your data is, and the size of the list will depend on how quickly that match is made or the stats that we get back. So we've seen a match done in a day. We've seen a huge list with quite old data take up to 7 days. So please just consider that when you're planning to launch a campaign, especially if it's a very, very large list. The maximum list size is 300,000 email addresses, and I have received lists of 600,000 email addresses that we've had to break into 2 lists. So that is the limit from the system. And then for your company names, the recommendation is at least 1,000 company names. Again, if you have a list of very large companies, we can always do a match with a smaller list, but I have received lists of 25 to 50 company names, and we've seen that it's not that worth doing because those lists are so small. So just to keep in mind, we really do need a chunky list if we want to get back a good count. And then moving on to website retargeting. So there are a few key things when it comes to website retargeting. I think that some important things to note is that as a client, you need to be willing to spend the time to build up an audience. Preferably, you need to already be running a campaign, and you need to have the insights tag set up. Some key things to note. It can take up to 30 days to build your audience. So again, for planning purposes, to keep that in mind, we recommend that your monthly unique visitors need to be in the region of about 20,000 in order for the website retargeting to be effective. And provided that you have enough traffic across your website segments, your audience can take between 24 to 48 hours to build or several days. Time and time again, I've just seen that there's no quick fix to this, and it can actually take months to create a cookie pool of people visiting your website and coming back to LinkedIn. So that is just key to note, that it's people who are visiting your website and then coming back to LinkedIn, and that's how we create the cookie pool. At least 300 members then need to be matched before the campaign can begin serving impressions to your website visitors. So that is a rough overview of how website retargeting works. And again, I'm so happy to send you these points post the session, and we're always very happy to help you set this up. So that is it from my side. Maybe we can dig into some questions.
Sammy, I think we're going to hand over to Sam Parker and then deal with the questions afterwards, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problems.
Sam, all over to you. All right, we just need to find Sam right now. In the meantime, maybe let's deal with the question since we're waiting for Sam. All right, I'm just going to go back to the first question while we are waiting. First question came from Bev, and I think, Sammy, since you've been dealing with it, maybe you or Marius can handle it. How to use LinkedIn to bring in business leads is a good question, but I think the way you use LinkedIn compared to other channels is a relevant point. Do you want to handle?
That's a great question. Sorry, I'm just still going to the very top. I see here, but sorry, just give me 1 second to get back to the top here. So many fantastic questions. How do we utilize LinkedIn to bring in business leads? Well, I think, as I alluded to, we do see that it's important to look at that buying funnel. So I think with LinkedIn, generally, what we're going to be selling is very expensive products, whether that's a new IT system or asking people to invest in a particular bank. Whatever the ask is, I think we need to look at how we are going to nurture the users down that buying cycle to ultimately become a lead. And so I think when it comes to business leads, we don't want to rush the process. There are other platforms where you can get hundreds of leads very quickly, but the question is always going to be, what is the quality of those leads? I think what comes to mind is quality versus quantity. And on LinkedIn, we might not see the quantity, but the quality will be there because we're speaking to the right professionals. So I think when it comes to business leads, we want to nurture the audience, give them information that is going to help them, that is going to educate them, that is going to entice them. And once you have built up a relationship with your audience, you can then ask them for their details or to become a lead. And we've just seen time and time again how effective that approach is. So LinkedIn is brilliant for business leads. It's just about process and how you go about getting those leads. And then, as I mentioned, just how you manage those leads. I think, our job is to make sure that we run those campaigns and get you the leads, but then it's also that follow through on how you're communicating, how you are selling once you have that lead, and even upselling from there. So I don't know if that answers your question, Bev, but absolutely, LinkedIn is fantastic for business leads, and we can assist you further in how to best go about that process.
Sam, I think we're going to hand over to Mr. Parker while we got you, just in the interest of time, and then we'll get to the rest of the questions. Mr. Parker, all over to you. Are we having trouble with your mic there, Sam? Sorry, ladies and gents, I think we're just having a technical issue at the moment with Mr. Parker. I think while he's connecting, and I think Sam, just interrupt when you do connect, we'll just answer the next question, since we've got quite a few out there. We have you, Mr. Parker.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we have you.
Great, fantastic. Well, I'm going to start talking. Hopefully you guys will be able to follow along, and I should be able to advance the slides from here. So we're going to talk about B2B marketing trends. Why are we talking about B2B marketing trends? Well, you, I'm sure, know that LinkedIn is a great place to act in a space where you can communicate with other brands and other businesses. So B2B marketing is the sweet spot, and lead generation within B2B marketing is definitely the sweet spot for marketers. So I think my control is now working after repeatedly pressing the button. Hopefully we're not going to race through the slides too quickly. The first trend is being first to mind. Most marketing today is not customer centric. Just 3% of buyers say advertising is relevant to them, which is an alarmingly small number. And you consider that most people are exposed to maybe 5,000 advertising messages per day. There's a huge amount of noise. There's a huge amount of clutter. But think for a second about Netflix. That's a brand that most people know about or have heard about. For those of you with Netflix accounts, you'll be familiar with this kind of experience. And what you're seeing is one customer experience. Netflix doesn't have just one customer experience. They have literally millions of customer experiences. And in this case, you're seeing the top picks for Joshua. So their experience is individual to them. It's personalized. And why is that important? Well, firstly, it's the fact that every little detail is driven by data. So in this case, we're considering the sort of listings that are broken out for this particular individual, and that's driven by an algorithm that's ultimately driven by data. And that is exactly the same thing that drives the material and the content that you see in your feed on any social media platform, including LinkedIn. So in this instance, the member actually likes romantic movies, and you can see here there's a promotion for Good Will Hunting, a movie that most people know. And because they like romantic movies, like the ones you can see on the left, that message is personalized to them. So it's the very desirable Matt Damon appearing in a romantic scene. But what about somebody who likes comedies and is interested in the sort of movies that you see below that? Well, in that instance, what they're going to see is a different message entirely. They're going to see a picture of Robin Williams, one of the funniest guys who ever lived, and is absolutely the sort of individual and the sort of personality that is going to pull people in to watch that movie. So you can see that data is what's driving that. If you go back to what your own work might look like in marketing, the best it might get is that you've constructed some kind of B2B persona, and that's informed by guesswork. It's about how you create a marketing persona that fits your own needs, and it isn't necessarily something that you've created based on the realities of the audience or the community that you're trying to reach. And here's just some common kinds of personas, and they may not go any deeper than that, which is just an enormous shame, because you can realize what potential there exists when you think about what LinkedIn data exists. Two of the tools that you can use to get hold of that data, one of which Sammy was talking about just now, the website demographics. You should turn to Turn Left Media to actually help you to implement this so you can understand the audiences that are landing on your website. And the second, you should absolutely turn to Turn Left Media for the simple reason that if you understand the content that your audience is engaging with in greater detail on the LinkedIn platform at any given time, then you stand a really strong chance of being able to craft the kind of content in a way that is going to drive that engagement. So the message here is think like Netflix. Yeah, if you can do that effectively, you stand a really strong chance of reaching your desired audience, and most importantly, to get them to engage with you. When we think about first to mind, it's important to differentiate that with being first to market. First to market doesn't matter. In this instance, consider these two computers. Which one was first to market? Was it the Apple Macintosh or the Altair 8800? In actual fact, it wasn't the Apple Macintosh. It was the Altair 8800. But nobody knows about that because it wasn't launched very well. And actually, the Apple marketing machine did a much better job. If you think back to the way that they were marketing computers in the 1980s, they did a fantastic job. And the book that you're seeing on the screen is actually, it talks to great detail about why that is important when you're thinking about marketing. The way it's illustrated is to plot brands on two axes, the first being awareness and the second being market share. There's a relationship between the two. And think about your own brand for a second. What's your own position on that chart? And then that should help you to think a little bit more clearly about the strategy that you should use when you're looking to engage with your audiences. Think about that relationship and think ultimately about where you are on that plot. As Sammy was saying earlier, sponsored content is a great upper funnel tool that enables you to drive awareness. And it's only once this has been accomplished that you can then start to think about the more active levels of engagement and lead generation that follow on from this. Next, we go on to think about first to mind, and what if that space is really occupied already? So back to the book. If you can't be first to mind, invent a new category. In this case, we're talking about two people that managed to differentiate themselves, but for very different reasons, but they were occupying the same space. This guy, Lindbergh, he was the first American to fly across the Atlantic. What's less well known is Amelia was also one of the firsts, but not quite the first. She was second, but she didn't make much of that particular point that she flew across the Atlantic. She was the first female to fly across the Atlantic, and she made a huge amount of commercial mileage out of the fact that she was the first woman. And ultimately, she is standing out in the history books because of that fact. And so the trick there was to promote as being somebody who was actually first to do something in their own category. The way we think about that is to use a matrix, first to mind, a simple 2x2 grid, as you can see here, and we plot upon that where we see opportunities to become first to mind. And in this instance, we're talking about a healthcare brand that we were working with, and we realized that they were pretty much in the no awareness box. There were competitors emerging, and there were one or two with strong and many with weak, but the reality is they were the red dot. So we thought differently about this, and we think, actually, what about value-based care, where there is no strong awareness, but there is emerging awareness? And actually, from a storytelling and from a content point of view, it made much more sense to actually drive the narrative towards a value-based care story. So the trick is to think about where your opportunities to stand out are. Where can you find a white space that you can use to really drive the conversation to your intended audience? The last trend, and probably my favorite, is the originality delusion. And if you think about how you face the challenges in your own work of marketing, it's either your boss who says, we want to do something that's never been done before, or you work in an agency and the client is obsessed with newness. The creative brief comes through and it's got never been done before written all over it. This is a story that Tropicana, the famous orange juice brand, faced in 2009 when the leadership team said, hey, we need to change the brand because it's feeling old and we need to change it up a bit and make it look more modern. And it was something that was talked about in the industry for many years following on from this because it was a disaster. This new brand that you can see was an absolute failure. It flopped. And this is not an isolated case. The reality is that only 1 in 5 new ad campaigns outperform old campaigns. But think about that for a second. This obsession with newness is not great. It's actually counterproductive. The trick is actually to think about something that is in the middle space. It's not new, but it's not old. And to bring this back to a place that we've been talking about today with LinkedIn, what does CXOs want from thought leadership? Well, yeah, sure, they want newness and originality, but that's a minority desire. The ambition is to find things that are relevant to them. So by using some of the tools, insights and reporting, you can actually discover what would be relevant to your intended audience. And once you know that, then you stand a much larger chance of being successful in what your selling message is. It's not necessarily original, it's more what has been termed by this marketer Maya. Raymond Loewy, he termed this as most advanced yet acceptable, which is not the Tropicana narrative of completely changing everything up and making the product or the narrative unrecognizable. It's about adopting the most advanced yet acceptable. And in the case of Tropicana, it looked like this. It was a new design, but it had a lot of the attributes of the original product. So the message is, when you're thinking about your own content, invest in a familiar franchise. As you can see, we have the trends, and that's been going since 2015, and we'll definitely be doing it in 2020 and probably for many years beyond that. The point is that other brands that are doing this are at the top of their game. Some examples that show how this can be done. The Kleiner Perkins story, it's 10 million hits on SlideShare Internet Trends report that's covered by Mary Meeker. She covers this every year, and it almost breaks the internet. It's a runaway success. But as a brand, everybody knows Mary, and everybody knows to look out for this Internet Trends report on SlideShare. Look at Salesforce, the same thing. They run a repetitive state of analytics. They run a state of sales. They are renowned for producing these global annual guides. And the point is, that you have your own opportunity to generate this kind of brand. And we at LinkedIn do the same thing. Back in 2015, we invented the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide. That's going strong and will continue to be that way for many years to come. And the idea is to then break that repetitive piece of content, your blockbuster, if you like, into its component pieces. And in this instance, you can see that your big guide or report can then be made up into infographics, mobile downloads, podcasts, and webinars. These are the sort of things that you should be thinking about to segment your content into relevant messages for your target audience. So in short summary, I think these trends, they're not just applicable to LinkedIn, but they are absolutely the sort of things that should be guiding your thinking and help you to understand a little bit more about what makes your audience tick when you're thinking about the ways to engage them on LinkedIn. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm going to stay on the call to help answer any questions.
Thank you very much, guys. So that was some really great content from Sam Olivier and Sam Parker, talking through the ad units and then giving us some B2B marketing trends for the year. There's been some really good questions. I'm going to tackle the first three. The first one, I've asked this before the previous event, and you guys mentioned that you are looking into this. What's the status of lookalike audiences? So I'm really pleased to say that lookalike audiences are now available on LinkedIn. You can utilize this within the targeting capabilities of LinkedIn. It utilizes either website demographics, so website remarketing, or your matched audiences. So if you upload a list of either contact details for individuals, you can then choose a lookalike audience, and the system will build it for you. It takes about 24 to 48 hours. And what we've seen is that generally that lookalike audience is around 5 times bigger than the original list. So it works particularly well if you want to reach people who share common characteristics with the original audience. And it does work differently. So for people who are familiar with the LinkedIn system, lookalike audiences work differently from a tool called Audience Extension, in that they utilize sort of true profile information to help you find similar people. The second question, you mentioned that the LinkedIn's Insights tag should be implemented in the page footer. Surely best practice is either to use GMT, so that's Google Tag Manager, or to hard code into the header in case users bounce before the page is loaded. So there are multiple tag management systems. I think at the moment LinkedIn supports about 9 different ones that you can use. Or you can code it into the global header as well. Obviously that helps you because it fires before the page is completely loaded. Some brands have different ways that they approach this. So the reason why they would load it into the global footer is they want to ensure the best experience for the client. And even though the LinkedIn Insights tag literally takes like less than a hundredth of a microsecond to load, people are worried about load rates for websites. So that's why they normally say load it into the global footer, but you can use the tag manager or load it into the global header as well. Last question from my side. So retargeting. So it's similar to Google remarketing, but the ads are being served on LinkedIn after they've visited your site. So that is 100% correct. So somebody will visit your website. They can go to a specific section, and based on your remarketing segments, you can then retarget to them based on the content they've read, the segment they visited, or if you are doing sort of funnel marketing and you're either taking people through a form completion process or through a download process. Let's say you take people through a form and they drop off between step 1 and step 2, then you can retarget them to complete step 2, for example. Or if you run a campaign, they've completed the form, they land on the thank you page, you can then retarget them a week later to say, you know what, we know you've downloaded a white paper on cloud security. Here is a new piece of insights on a similar topic. So you can use that remarketing just in different ways from a LinkedIn perspective.
Great, thanks, Marius. There was just one more question at the bottom. What is the minimum size of the lookalike audience data set?
So again, this is it's one thing about LinkedIn, whether it's matched audiences or lookalike audiences. In order to have any audience, in order to build any audience, run any campaign on LinkedIn, it always has to find at least 300 people.
Wonderful. Cool. I'm going to tackle the next 4. The first one being, any tips on creative? Other social platforms suggest a nice clean image with as little as possible text on it. What qualifies a thumb stopper on LinkedIn? What have you guys really seen work well? So this is such a timely question, because we actually noticed recently a beautiful image on LinkedIn. Some of you may have seen it, where waves were washing over the text as if like a wave was crashing over the actual feed. And so we do have 2 people that are contracted out to do creative for us, to do animations and various other images. And so what we have done as Turn Left Media is created a few mock-ups of these examples. And we think this is going to perform brilliantly because it is so engaging. I wonder, I think if you're interested to see them, maybe pop us an email and we can send you some of these examples. Unless, Marius, you want to share your screen, I don't know what would be easier. But that, for me, would be a thumb stopper, something that is completely different. Please feel free to email us if you would like a quote on us creating one of these ads for you. They obviously are more expensive, but if you're going to get the return, it might be worth it if you can. There we go. So this is the wave one. As you can see, how incredible that this wave looks like it's just washing over the text. So something like this, I think, is what people haven't necessarily done on the platform yet. And I think as Turn Left, we are constantly looking at ways that we can create images that are more exciting or more engaging. I do think, and other simple tips, it's always good to use pictures of people. I think when it's boring machinery or very bland images that aren't really linked to the brand, we see higher engagement when it's images of people. I mean, not to say that you can't use images of machinery. I think it's just about the image making sense and being linked to the headline. We also have a best practice guide around images, preferably what you would use, as well as then your headline. Just by calling out the audience, you can get a lift in CTR, or by using a bit of humor. They're all of these very simple best practice guides. So I'm more than happy to send those to you. Next question is, what is the easiest way to manage multiple company pages with the ability to run advertising for each? So unfortunately, I wish I had some amazing answer, but in terms of managing company pages, it's the capacity. You've got to find someone who has the time to just manage those pages, and especially if there are multiple pages, I would maybe do a little bit of an audit and look at if you do need 6 different company pages, or if you could have a main company page and then maybe an affiliated page. The affiliated pages are set up in the same way as a company page, but when you're on the company page, on the right-hand side, you would see affiliated pages. So, for example, some car brands would have their main page and then affiliated pages for their various models. In terms of running advertising, so the one thing that I didn't mention, and apologies, I should have, is that you get sponsored content where we promote an organic post to an audience, and then you also get something called direct sponsored content. And that's similar to a dark post where we actually build the post and it doesn't live on the company page. And this is great if you want to do A/B copy testing or you want to play around with various images. But the great thing about sponsored content, and why I mentioned the two different ones, is that all we are doing with sponsored content is promoting it to an audience. So if you have an organic content calendar for your pages, it doesn't require that much more work when you want to run advertising, because if you are posting 2 to 3 organic posts per week for a paid for campaign, we could promote 1 of the 3 or 2 of the 3. So I think that's a way that you could manage a page effectively when it comes to organic versus paid for and running a campaign, is that you can leverage your organic content calendar to run a campaign. So I hope that is helpful. Okay, Marlon, I see LinkedIn was very strict in the past around types of creative formats being used on the platform. Has this changed overall with regards to types of creative? Of course, they would still need to look professional and in line. Yes, so LinkedIn, LinkedIn have this user-first mentality. So they are always going to consider the user and the user experience. And that is why their specs are so strict, because they want to make sure that the user is having a positive experience. So, unfortunately, if creatives don't adhere to the specs, we're not going to be able to promote them. So what we have done is we've created these submission forms per ad unit, which have examples, all the specs, every single line that you would need to fill in building these campaigns, we've put into a submission form. And we're actually trying to simplify them to make them a little bit more user-friendly. But we find that they're a great way because everything is concisely in this one submission form. All the correct specs, the image sizes, the headline character counts, those sorts of things. So to answer your question, Marlon, they are still strict in terms of the specs around the creative formats, and the example we showed you of the wave, that would still need to adhere to the specs. But I think that, we can absolutely experiment with images and how we can come up with more alternative ideas when it comes to images. I hope that answers your question. Right, and then the in-mail question. So with in-mail, I've been served these ads often, and most of the time, I'm not ever slightly interested. I understand that it gets served when I log in, but how long does it stay in the messages tab of the user? When I open it or click on something in the in-mail, please could you explain what qualifies as a success? Okay, so I think it's important to just distinguish. We have our sponsored in-mails, and those are ones that you can only receive every 45 days. But if you have a premium account, you can also send a direct message or email message to someone. So you might have gotten one from a recruiter or someone who wants to do business with you, and that's not necessarily going to be a sponsored in-mail. Can you hear me? So yeah, so just to clarify, people can still send you an in-mail message that's not sponsored, but you can only receive a sponsored in-mail from a brand every 45 days, and that will stay in your inbox. Once you've opened it, you're losing me again. It's resolving network issues. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Sam. Yes, Sam, we can hear you.
Our internet's down. We can't hear you either.
Okay, guys. So, Kelly, we can all hear Sam, but I don't think she can hear us. The only thing I wanted to add from Marlon's question is, if we think about the wave example, so that is utilizing you know, all of the existing LinkedIn creative specs, and it's just thinking about how do you employ that in different ways. Last one, just what are the industry benchmark costs for the different ad units? So all of the LinkedIn ads run on a second price auction. So there isn't benchmark costs. It literally varies per audience, per ad unit, and how long you want to run it. We can give you estimates, or you can actually go into the platform and you can see the estimates yourselves. The moment you understand exactly the audience you want to use and what of the LinkedIn ad units you actually want to use to reach those people. So it varies. If you're unsure how to do it, we're more than happy to show you. So we'll share, and you know, if there are specific industries, we can give you benchmark reports in terms of performance for particular industries, so higher education or IT or automotive. You can just let us know which one, and we can share those particular ones or particular markets with you. Guys, thank you very, very much for the time. We're going to go through these questions. If there's, we will see, and we'll try and provide answers to those questions in the recording and in the follow-up mail after the session. Thank you so much for joining us. It really has been great. Next month, we're going to do some advanced strategies on LinkedIn. Those strategies will be a deep dive into the insights tag, website demographics, how to use all of the advanced features from LinkedIn. We're going to circulate the presentation and the recording afterwards, and thank you very, very much. Have a great day.